Welcome to Sermon Brainwave with me, Karoline Lewis.
And me, Rolf Jacobson.
And me, Matt Skinner.
The text for All Saints Sunday, I will tell you in a minute. But first, if you're looking for the podcast for the 21st Sunday after Pentecost, that is a different podcast. But if you're of the All Saints persuasion, the texts are from Daniel chapter 7, verses 1 through 3, and then 15 through 18, Psalm 149, Ephesians 1, 11 through 23, and Luke 6, 20 through 31. Because I got to read the text, I didn't get to sing.
That's okay. Nice humming.
That's humming.
It is.
For all the saints. Okay, so All Saints.
Maybe not the text you were expecting when you realized All Saints was coming up and thought there'd be some lovely kind of funeral-appropriate texts. You get some weird things with Luke 6 and Daniel 7 or some challenging things, but still, nevertheless, I think texts that can fit, right? Once you kind of shake off the woe language of Luke chapter 6, there's some interesting things here about the blessings and the woes. We did talk about this, I believe, way back in the Epiphany of this
when we
year.
had this text before.
The blessings and the woes. And now we get texts that really hit differently in that whole Lucan notion of reversal, whether you think you are currently in the favored, privileged category or in the more disadvantaged category. Depends what blessing and woe mean. There's still a lot going on here, right? But as an interesting place to start, though, is why might we hear parts of this text as disconcerting? And why might other people hear this text and hear a lot of promise, a lot of goodness, a lot of hope for a future?
Do you have an answer to that?
Well, I think I am not representative of the kinds of people who first followed Jesus and that Jesus was first attracted to. Not that there's anything wrong with me being a follower of Jesus, but I have to recognize that the message of Jesus comes first and foremost to people who negotiated their cultural world very differently than I have been able to negotiate mine. And that's a reality, and that's a challenge with reading the whole Bible, really, I think, or at least a lot of the Gospels for sure.
Well, it's a reminder here, too, of, we've been going along in Luke, and we're much farther along in the season of Pentecost, and now we've gone all the way back to chapter 6 for All Saints. And so we're only 2 chapters away from Jesus' sermon in Nazareth. And so this really is a continuation of that sermon. And it is also the verses just prior to this, not that you need to add them, but to set this up that this is Jesus' sermon on the plain. But verse 17, he came down with them and stood on a level place. And that was the first homiletical promise that I heard in this passage, even before you get to the Beatitudes, is that Jesus came down with them. And if you think about the ways in which we acknowledge All Saints Sunday, what we want to preach on, the way in which All Saints Sunday marks of course, losing persons and naming the persons that whom you've lost. That promise that Jesus is with us in that grief and in that naming of loss was the first promise I heard, even before the Beatitudes came along.
Whatever kind of a reversal he teaches about, he's already performing in his own self as God with us, to jump to a line from Matthew. And as well, there is a kind of leveling here. I mean, I think there's a simplicity about the blessings and woes that's not helpful if it makes us imagine that we're all going to be divided up into sides and everybody's going to switch places. I don't think that's justice as the rest of the Bible talks about it. Not to answer back to Jesus here too much, but, there's more to it than what he's saying here. But part of what's going on, I think, is a way in which we're being asked to consider all of us together. What does it mean to be full while others are hungry? What does it mean to have wealth and advantages while others lack those things? And so one of the leveling, or maybe even egalitarian aspects that's embedded in this, like you said, coming down on a level place, is this notion that we're all responsible for one another to a degree. that my liberation is bound up in your liberation, my wholeness is bound up in your wholeness, my health is bound up in your health. My future, my security is bound up in yours. And that's not a very popular message in some circles. It might fit an ancient agricultural rural culture better than it fits a kind of post-Enlightenment Western fetishization of selfhood. But I think there's a truth to it.
And one of the
Rolf's fetishizing his selfhood right now. I can see it in his eyes. Sorry.
Where did that come from?
We're really into selfhood and to where my rights begin and end and how far yours can go. But keep going.
Radical individual.
Sorry, I think the word fetish maybe threw you there.
No, the whole phrase did.
Okay.
Fetishization of selfhood.
Well, and
I would just say rugged individualism.
Rugged individualism. Well, the other one of the rhetorical aspects of this passage that emphasizes that is the difference here between the commentary points this out between Luke, blessed are you, all y'all, plural, and that second person plural, and then Matthew's blessed are those, the third person. And so it really is that address to all of us. It's not, as you said, it's not just and the way in which we are all a part of that reality and that shared existence of blessing and woe. And so that's another really significant detail of Luke's version of this compared to Matthew's. And hearing this address as all y'all, and then you can't really distance yourself from a third person object lesson, if you will. I think. Go ahead.
So. To go back, Karoline,
we pause. Rolf jumps in.
Were you suggesting adding verses? You started at verse 17.
I did.
And the lesson starts at verse 20.
Yeah, I think.
So I like adding those verses.
Well, thank you. Well, they're certainly important contextually and narratively.
But also because I like verses 18. I like verse 18.
I just want to say that was a great idea you had, Rolf, to add verses.
It was Karoline's idea.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just going along with the joke.
I know. So he comes down with his disciples who'd been with him. So he came down with them. I mean, with the disciples. They also came down. And then the multitude on the plain that had come to hear him and be healed, and they were... So there's many people with diseases and those troubled with unclean spirits. So it's in the midst of all of that I guess the notion of all saints then jumps out to me that we're all in this together, including all of the folks maybe that we, not only the ones that we maybe hate or that hate us,
which is the latter
which
part
is the end of the passage, but also just sort of like the freaks and geeks and people that you might not want to hang with.
Yeah. And to go back to those verses that you mentioned, I said you should add, because that great crowd of disciples, so it's not only his disciples, but then a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And so that also, that's another detail of this passage too, where either adding the verses or referring to the verses then puts that blessed are you, all you all, that entirety of that audience present, I think is significant. And to imagine, as you said, what are we talking about when we're talking about this, great crowd and multitude of people from all over, not just a located place like in Galilee or not just Jesus' disciples. I think another important aspect of this passage that, again, you don't have to add verses, but you look ahead, in terms of all saints, is verse 36, that this vision that Jesus has for what the kingdom of God looks like and what his ministry is about and what he's bringing is about, the origin of that, or where that new perspective of what's happening flows from God's mercy. Verse 36, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. And so then that charge of being merciful coming from God's own mercy is another way to think about these blessings and woes and what it means to hold each other together. And then on All Saints Sunday, how to maybe cast God's mercy. How do we hear God's mercy on a Sunday like this?
I like that we're not talking about only the blessings and the woes, because those catch a lot of my attention and they kind of wear me out. so to pay attention to the imperatives that come afterwards is, I think, really important, not just for understanding the passage, but even for thinking about All Saints' Day as well. One of the unfortunate things about being Protestant is we're all saints. We're not too enamored with naming certain people as saints for beatification of individuals. And there's something lost there. Like, it's good to have role models. It's good to have, quote unquote, heroes of the faith out there that can show us certain things, not to take the part, but it's nice to have those. And Protestantism sometimes gets a little anxious about that. But I think that that's a helpful way for thinking about the faith and how we learn the faith. So who are some of these people who have been models for what does it mean to love your enemies, who have been models of how to endure under persecution? I don't know what to do with that. I still like being Protestant at the end of the day. But All Saints should be about more than just here's the necrology of the people in our congregation who died last year. But
That's true. The problem with calling someone who's like the Hall of Fame of Christians saints is that the New Testament never uses the word saint ever in that way. Not once. It never uses the word saint as for the super Christians. It's always everybody. Am I wrong? You suddenly had a look in your face like, oh yeah, you're wrong. I'm about to tell you.
I was just going to say, like, I know that. But
okay.
yeah, I'm aware.
But I don't think people are. I don't think
that's correct.
The rank and file of Christians are aware because it's so, I mean, look, where did I go to college? College of St. Thomas. He's a saint. He's in the Hall of Fame. Do you know what I mean? It's, I think we're so used to using it, oh, she's a saint. She was a saint. I mean, we're so used to using it that way that we've lost the understanding that the point of All Saints from a Protestant perspective, i.e., what the Bible says. Okay, that was a little bit of a joke, but not much, Owen. But is that fact that, through the grace of God, we are all made into saints by God's grace. And then, therefore, what I like about the passage, especially the end, love your enemies, those things, is one hopes that over time, the communion of believers takes on the character of God, specifically the character of Jesus.
And that character, as I said, of mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Daniel talks about holy ones.
Yes, it sure does.
Yes, it does.
Also talks about monsters.
And 4 beasts.
Yeah.
4 kings shall rise out of
Does
the earth.
holy ones help with terminology instead of saints?
Here's what I would say is, I don't even think I'd read Daniel unless I was going to preach on it. And if you read on it, you better. And then you better pack your lunch because the amount of right, because the amount of stuff you're going to have to teach people to understand this is in however long. In my church, 12 minutes, you're not going to get very far.
I'm just finished my introduction by then.
Exactly,
right. With my jokes. Well, it's obviously it's picked for All Saints just because of verse 18, I think, right? But it's
holy ones.
Yes. But it's an interesting text, again, if you want to pack your lunch, like what Rolf said, and teach people. It's both in this context of empire after empire after empire, right? Mistreatment after mistreatment after mistreatment. In the midst of that, here's this promise. And people might be interested in learning that in Daniel, you have some real theological change taking place, where now it's not like the prophets before who were saying things like, you're disobedient, therefore you're going to get overrun, great suffering is on its way. Now it's great suffering is here, and the reason it's here is because you're so faithful. Right? The reason Antiochus and the Seleucids are persecuting you is a response to your faithfulness. And so your persecution is a kind of validation, badge of honor, whatever, which is people might appreciate knowing that there's something about times of distress that make faith riskier, but also where it shows itself in ways that are not comfortable. And this kind of help people get a sense for what a dramatic change of perspective Daniel is undertaking here, as well as some of his contemporaries, the Maccabees.
And if you do go that direction, I think the commentary is really helpful by Amy Merrill Willis. Yeah. Classmate for memory. Shout out to Amy.
Oh, classmate.
Classmate, back in the day. I
thought you said her of blessed memory or something like that.
No. Our doctoral days at Emory. So thanks, Amy, for a great commentary.
That's in Alabama, right?
Pretty much.
Georgia.
In Alabama,
Atlanta?
Georgia. Yes.
Is that where it is?
Atlanta, yes.
I lose track.
All right. The psalm, it's a beautiful psalm.
Yeah. for the first half.
Well, yeah.
You don't like the part about swords and vengeance and binding kings with fetters.
It's going so well. And then
it's like the blessing and the woes. That's the pattern. It's the same pattern.
It's totally not the right pattern. I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Except for Jesus said, love your enemies. And the Psalm says,
I was just talking about the blessing and the woes, not the love of your enemies.
Let high praise.
You mean just a shift, just a little of a bit of a whiplash.
Yeah.
Yeah. As Nancy, I think, quotes Walter Brueggemann going, I don't know what to do with these verses.
You got 149 of them, I guess. You can get one. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how the whole thing is bracketed with praise, but some very different emotions or some very different theological hopes embedded within it. Yeah.
Were you going somewhere else with that?
I don't know. Okay. Verse 4, I would just say, I would cut verses here and only read verse 4.
Yes.
The Lord takes pleasure in the Lord's people.
We'll trade some extra verses from Luke.
We're always adding verses. We never cut. So why don't we just cut a few here?
Yeah, let's cut all the verses except for verse 4. That's perfect. Okay.
I guess the only thing I would say then, just theologically about the wish for vengeance is perhaps, as Romans says, vengeance belongs to the Lord, meaning it doesn't belong to us. And so at least there appears to be a praising God because we can turn over our vengeance to God and not live it out ourselves.
I like that the Bible acknowledges the desire for vengeance to not be a rare thing that we all experience at one level. Maybe I shouldn't say all.
No, I think
all of me experiences it.
I think pretty much everybody does at a certain point in their life.
And how you act on it and how you leave vengeance to God's hands. Those are important questions.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to hear them on All Saints' Day, personally, but...
Ephesians. Guess what? There are saints in Ephesians, too.
Well, there should be, because
verse 15.
But they're not the heroes.
Well, yeah, but...
Everybody.
But the word saints is in Ephesians, so...
Holy ones.
That was a connection I made.
Hagioi.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have more to say about Ephesians? Anything catch your attention? We've got a very helpful commentary from Shikar Wan, who's an Ephesians expert. Nice to have him on Ephesians. So we got that going for us. He helps with the cosmic scope here that we see a lot of in Colossians and a little bit in Ephesians. And here's one place where we get that, especially in verses 20 to 23, that we're not just talking about a Christ who, holds your hand when you die, but is somehow enthroned, is the one who oversees all things, and whatever we're expecting beyond this life, the all in all is something that Christ holds and is therefore normed by, defined by Christ's own character.
And I think that would be a helpful sermon for people to hear, in terms of imagining, not that we want to picture the afterlife or heaven or whatever, but that promise that you said of Christ as the overall of what's promised to us, and certainly the language of obtained an inheritance, that in a sense that is what sets us apart, to use the root of saint or holiness, is that promise of an inheritance, and that promise of Jesus as all in all, overall, even in death and what follows. And so that in and of itself, I think, could be a promise that a number of people would want to hear. Sermon Brainwave is a production of Working Preacher from Luther Seminary. Working Preacher has been a trusted source of inspiration, interpretation, and imagination for preachers since 2007 and worldwide. Find episodes, commentaries, and links at workingpreacher.org/brainwave, and subscribe to Working Preacher's monthly newsletter for Revised Common Lectionary Preachers by clicking on subscribe in the website footer. Please rate, review, and comment on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for joining us.